So, you want to own a slaughterhouse. Not a tech startup. Not a trendy franchise. A slaughterhouse. It's not the kind of business people casually mention at networking events. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It might be one of the most essential businesses on the planet. Every burger, every steak, every supermarket meat aisle stocked at 6 a.m. starts somewhere. And that somewhere isn't a farm or a food truck. It's a processing plant. Steel floors, conveyor systems, refrigerated rooms running with mechanical precision, hour after hour, day after day. Own one of those facilities, and you're not just selling meat. You're controlling a choke point in the global food supply. Ranchers need you. Grocery chains rely on you. Fast food empires depend on you. Demand doesn't disappear in a recession. People cut vacations before they cut protein. On paper, it sounds powerful. Steady demand. Massive throughput. A multi-billion-dollar industry that feeds entire nations. But here's the part nobody talks about. For all that scale, the margins can be razor thin. One contamination event can shut you down overnight. Regulations are relentless. Labor is grueling. Public scrutiny is constant. And the companies that survive don't win because it's glamorous, they win because they operate with ruthless efficiency. This isn't a vanity business. It's an operational battlefield hiding in plain sight. And if you're thinking about stepping into it, the economics might surprise you. Now zoom out. Because when most people hear slaughterhouse, they picture a small, grim industrial building on the edge of town. Maybe a local operation processing a few dozen animals a day. That image is wildly outdated. Globally, humans consume more than 350 million tons of meat every single year. Tens of billions of chickens. Hundreds of millions of cattle and pigs. And nearly all of them pass through a processing facility before they ever reach your plate. This isn't a fringe industry. It's a backbone industry. In the United States alone, a handful of companies, Tyson Foods, JBS, Cargill, National Beef, control the majority of beef and poultry processing. JBS, originally a Brazilian company, grew into the largest meat processor in the world through aggressive acquisitions. Tyson generates tens of billions in annual revenue. These aren't plants, they're empires. And here's where it gets interesting. You're not just buying a warehouse with cold storage. You're stepping into one of the most powerful supply chains in the global economy. Meatpacking sits at the center of farmers, feed suppliers, trucking companies, grocery chains, and fast food giants. If that link breaks, shelves empty fast. That's why consolidation happened. Scale means leverage. Leverage over suppliers. Over buyers. Overpricing. What looks like a gritty, low-profile operation is often part of a vertically integrated machine. Companies that own feedlots, processing plants, distribution networks, even branded products. From the outside, it looks industrial. From the inside, it's strategic dominance disguised as stainless steel. Now comes the reality check. Let's say you're serious. You've found land outside a mid-sized city. Zoning works. Utilities are accessible. You're ready to build. First expense, the facility itself. This isn't a generic warehouse. Slaughterhouses require reinforced flooring, drainage systems, specialized kill floors, cutting rooms, blast chillers, refrigeration units, and segregated zones to prevent cross-contamination. Temperature control alone can run into the millions. Then comes equipment. Conveyor systems. Stunning systems. Deboning lines. Industrial saws. Packaging machines. Cold storage. Backup generators, because if the power goes out, so does your product. You thought the building was expensive? Wait until you see the wastewater system. Processing animals consumes enormous amounts of water, and that water leaves contaminated. You'll need on-site treatment infrastructure or agreements with municipal systems that can handle biological waste. Environmental compliance isn't optional, it's continuous. And then there's regulation. In the US, USDA inspection is mandatory for interstate commerce. That means facility approval, ongoing inspections, strict sanitation protocols, documented hazard analysis plans, and zero tolerance for certain contamination events. Delays in approval can burn cash for months while your plant sits idle. Add biosecurity controls, worker safety systems, ventilation engineering, insurance premiums, legal fees. By the time you factor in land, construction, equipment, compliance systems, and working capital, even a small regional slaughterhouse can easily cost $10 to $30 million to launch. An industrial-scale facility? Think $100 million and up. This is not a scrappy startup. It's heavy industry where the entry ticket alone filters out almost everyone. So where does the money actually come from? At a basic level, there are two models. First, custom processing. Farmers pay you a fee per animal to process, cut, and package the meat. In this setup, you're a service provider. Your revenue is predictable, tied to throughput, and you don't own the livestock. Second, wholesale meat sales. This is where things scale. You purchase cattle or hogs, process them, and sell boxed beef or pork to distributors, grocery chains, and restaurant suppliers. Now you're exposed to market prices both on the animal you buy and the meat you sell. But that's not the whole picture. Every animal has byproducts. Hides are sold to leather producers. Bones and inedible tissue are turned into meat and bone meal. Fat becomes tallow, used in food production, cosmetics, even biofuels. Blood can be processed into animal feed additives. Rendering operations quietly extract value from what most people consider waste. Here's the myth-busting part. The margin per animal is shockingly small. In some market conditions, a beef processor might make only $50 to $150 per head. Sometimes less. On a 1,000-pound animal that retails for thousands of dollars downstream, that's razor thin. So how do you make real money? Volume. If you process 4,000 cattle a day, even a $100 margin becomes $400,000 daily. But if margins compress to $20, your profits nearly evaporate overnight. And margins move constantly. Cattle prices fluctuate. Feed costs rise and fall. Consumer demand shifts. Export markets open and close. One quarter can be wildly profitable. The next can be painful. This business isn't about giant markups. It's about operating like an airline or a casino, massive scale, relentless efficiency, and surviving on thin slices repeated thousands of times a day. On paper, a slaughterhouse is just a processing facility. In reality, it's a leverage machine. Small operators struggle for one simple reason: they don't control enough volume to negotiate. Ranchers want competitive bids for their cattle. Supermarkets want consistent supply at predictable prices. If you're processing a few hundred head a week, you have almost no bargaining power on either side. Scale changes everything. Large processors can negotiate livestock contracts months in advance. They can lock in transportation rates. They can demand shelf space from retailers. And because they move such enormous volume, even shaving a few dollars off input costs per animal translates into millions over a year. Then there's vertical integration. Some of the biggest players don't just process animals. They finance feedlots. They own distribution fleets. They supply branded beef and poultry products directly to grocery chains and restaurant giants. Instead of earning a thin margin in one step of the chain, they capture margin at multiple stages. And here's where it gets controversial. When you control a significant share of processing capacity, you influence bottlenecks. If slaughter capacity tightens, ranchers have fewer places to send cattle. Prices shift. Power concentrates. In the United States, decades of consolidation shrank the number of major beef processors to just a handful. Mergers, acquisitions, and aggressive expansion turned regional players into multinational giants. During downturns, these firms could absorb losses in one segment, while smaller plants already operating on thin margins simply folded. It's not just about efficiency. It's about survival through dominance. In meatpacking, size isn't a luxury. It's a shield and sometimes a weapon. Now we get to the part that keeps owners up at night. Imagine your plant is running at full capacity. Thousands of animals processed. Trucks moving in and out. Contracts being fulfilled. Cash finally flowing. And tomorrow morning, an inspector finds contamination. Operations stop. Shipments are recalled. Retailers pull product from shelves. News headlines start circulating. Regulators step in. The USDA suspends your inspection status pending investigation. Revenue drops to zero overnight. This isn't hypothetical. Disease outbreaks like mad cow disease or avian flu have shut down exports and crushed demand in entire regions. A single positive test can ripple through global trade markets. Even if your facility isn't directly responsible, you can still feel the shockwave. Then there are recalls. One batch of contaminated product can cost millions in retrieval, disposal, and lost contracts. The direct financial hit is painful. The reputational damage can be worse. And the risks aren't just biological. Slaughterhouses are physically demanding, hazardous environments. Worker injuries can lead to lawsuits, regulatory penalties, and higher insurance premiums. Labor disputes can halt production. Environmental violations can trigger fines or forced upgrades. Insurance helps, but it's expensive, and it never fully covers lost trust. This is the fragility of the business. You can operate efficiently for years, optimizing every dollar per head. But one failure in sanitation, one compliance lapse, one viral video from inside your facility, and you're in crisis mode. In a business built on thin margins and constant throughput, even a short shutdown can turn profit into loss. And there are no easy resets. Here's the part spreadsheets don't capture well: labor. Slaughterhouses are labor-intensive, physically demanding operations. The work is repetitive. It's fast. It requires precision under pressure. Turnover rates are often high, and training never really stops because someone is always new. Recruitment can be a constant challenge. Many facilities are located in rural areas where the local labor pool is limited. In some countries, the industry relies heavily on immigrant labor, which means immigration policy shifts can directly affect staffing levels. When labor tightens, wages rise. When wages rise, margins shrink. Safety is another layer. These are environments with sharp equipment, heavy machinery, slick floors, and strict production quotas. Injuries don't just carry human cost, they mean workers' compensation claims, higher insurance premiums, regulatory scrutiny, and slower lines. And slower lines are expensive. That's why automation is slowly creeping in. Robotic cutting systems, automated deboning technology, AI-driven quality control. In theory, machines reduce injuries and stabilize output. But automation isn't cheap. Installing advanced robotics can cost millions, and the technology still struggles with the biological variability of animals. No two carcasses are identical. The machines are expensive. The humans are harder. In this industry, labor isn't just a line item. It's a constant operational balancing act between speed and safety, cost and retention, efficiency and reality. And it may be the most difficult variable to control. Let's run a simplified model. Imagine a moderate-sized regional beef plant processing 1,000 cattle per day. Assume an average gross margin of $100 per head in a favorable market. That's $100,000 per day in gross profit. Over a 250-day operating year, you're looking at $25 million before overhead. Sounds impressive. Now subtract labor, utilities, maintenance, insurance, compliance staff, logistics, and administrative costs. Add debt service on, say, $40 million in startup loans. Suddenly that $25 million shrinks fast. Net profit might land in the mid-single-digit millions solid, but hardly outrageous relative to the capital at risk. That's the good year. Now flip the scenario. Cattle prices spike. Wholesale beef prices soften. Your margin drops to $30 per head. At the same throughput, that's $7.5 million gross annually. Then a contamination scare forces a 2-week shutdown and recall expenses. Profit doesn't just shrink. It disappears. This is the core truth. slaughterhouses are not high-margin cash machines. They are scale businesses, precision businesses, leverage businesses. You win by running consistently, negotiating intelligently, and avoiding catastrophic mistakes. Because in this industry, the line between a strong year and a disastrous one can be surprisingly thin. So, should you own a slaughterhouse? If you came in imagining easy money from an industry people can't live without, the reality is more sobering. This isn't a glamorous empire play. It's operational warfare. It's early morning inspections, tight margins, volatile commodity markets, labor headaches, wastewater systems, insurance policies, and constant risk management. Yes, it feeds nations. Yes, it generates billions in revenue. But the winners aren't dreamers chasing high markups. They're operators obsessed with efficiency. They're negotiators who understand leverage. They're risk managers who know one mistake can erase a year of profit. This isn't a luxury business. It's a control business. The people who win don't just sell meat, they control the pipeline. And that's the bigger lesson hiding inside stainless steel walls. Real power in business often lives in the unglamorous bottlenecks everyone else ignores. So here's the question. What uncomfortable industry should we break down next?